My name is Charles. I'm just an average office worker in my 30s, toiling away in the daily grind of commuting between home and work. Aging and getting tired seems inevitable, but one of the main causes of my fatigue is the influence of my boss, Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson is competent, beautiful, and looks like a model. On top of that, she is an elite who's been promoted early due to her excellent performance. She's so perfect that people often joke that God must have mistakenly packed all the talent into one person when he created her. However, for some reason, she's tough on me. Charles, there was another error in your paperwork. I'm sorry. I'm not looking for an apology. I want to know why you made a mistake. Listen carefully to what people say. Because I often make mistakes, I frequently get scolded by Mrs. Wilson like this. That kind of thing puts extra pressure on me to avoid making mistakes, and as a result, I'm exhausted. It's always so relaxing here. I say, taking a seat on a bench in a park. The park is close to my office, but there are not many people because there are homeless people. That's why I often take breaks here. It's my hidden retreat. Well, let's see how much I can get done today. After finishing my sandwich quickly, I took out some yarn from my bag. People might say it's feminine, but I've always enjoyed crafting. That's why I'm silently knitting here as a way to relieve stress. There's another reason I choose to knit here. Back again today, Charles. Hello, Joe. When I'm knitting, an old homeless man comes to sit next to me. This man is Joe. He's a friendly guy and a good conversation partner for me. People tend to shun him because he's homeless, but Joe doesn't mock me for knitting or call me feminine. He always listens to my stories. I started talking with Joe a few months ago. At that time, I was dumped by my girlfriend. I wanted to marry her. We had been together for 3 years. But one day, she suddenly disappeared, calling me effeminate and disgusting. She had moved out and left me, which made me so desperate. Even though we dated for 3 years, the way she treated me was unbelievable. The woolen hat I knitted for her, I couldn't give it to her. Honestly, I thought about throwing it away. That's when Joe started talking to me. Are you really going to throw that away? Yeah, but would you like to use it? I planned to give it to my girlfriend, but I don't need it anymore. I must have had a devastated look on my face at that time. Joe listened to me compassionately. This encounter became the starting point, and Joe and I began to chat frequently in this park. He still treasures the hat I gave him at that time. He's a truly kind person. You seem even more passionate today. Yeah, you know what? I made a mistake again today. During the brief lunch break, talking to this old homeless man is my way of relaxing. Joe listens to my stories with interest, and I enjoy our time. But the fun time always ends quickly. Well, I'll be back. Don't make a mistake next time. As I packed up my knitting and handed Joe some snacks I bought for him, I left the place. A few weeks later, I was assigned to go on an outside job with Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Wilson is very efficient at her work and very popular with our clients. Honestly, I wonder if I'm really needed, but it seems like the reason is the luggage is heavy, so she needs my help. I can't help it because my sales skills are lacking, but I was knitting in the park today, hoping that she would rely on me a bit more. Hello, Charles. Hello, Joe. Sorry, I might not be able to stay long today. I have an outside job after lunch. That must be tough, I said to him in a relaxed tone. When I talk to him, I feel tension leave my shoulders, and I can relax. He may have once had a job where he had to talk to people. As I was thinking that, my phone rang suddenly. It was Mrs. Wilson. Charles, where are you right now? I'm at Cozy Park. That's perfect. I just decided to use my car for today's field job, so I'll pick you up. After Mrs. Wilson said that, I checked my watch. Indeed, lunch break was almost over. The timing was perfect. I was called by my boss, so I'll leave soon. Is it the scary boss you were talking about? Don't say that in front of her. I saw Mrs. Wilson's car stop at the entrance of the park. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, for picking me up. It's on the way, so it doesn't matter. I didn't know there was a park here. Mrs. Wilson stared at me in the park and froze. To be precise, she was looking at Joe, who was behind me. Dad? Mrs. Wilson ran up to Joe and hugged him. I've been looking for you. I was so worried. Charles, who is this beautiful person? Huh. Looking at the clueless Joe, Mrs. Wilson was frozen. I told Mrs. Wilson that he has amnesia. Knowing that fact, Mrs. Wilson seemed to be shocked. No way. Dad, did you forget about me? Are you sure you're not mistaken? I can't believe I have such a beautiful daughter. You're not mistaken because those gloves, they were made by Mom. Saying that, Mrs. Wilson was teary-eyed. Come to think of it, Joe always wore those ragged gloves, even though they were worn out with holes and missing fingers. It was something he had worn since he came here. He seemed to cherish them. Mrs. Wilson asked Joe several times, but Joe just tilted his head. It wasn't getting anywhere like this, so I decided to leave the park with Mrs. Wilson for now. It was time for work after all. During the field job, we were silent all the way. Mrs. Wilson, who never put personal feelings into her work, is strict but handled things professionally until the work was over. But as soon as the field job ended and we arrived at the park lot, she burst into tears, perhaps unable to hold it in any longer. All alone, she muttered, "Sly, Dad, was it so traumatic that you forgot?" She looked so pitiful. Mrs. Wilson, if you're okay with it, I'll listen to you. I said this more as a consolation, but it seemed Mrs. Wilson had wanted someone to listen, and she slowly began to talk about Joe. No, about her father, Mr. John Wilson. The Wilson family was a bit wealthier than the average family. Mr. John was a school teacher, and his wife was a nurse. However, when Mrs. Wilson was just starting her career, her mother passed away suddenly. She was involved in a traffic accident. It seemed Dad loved Mom so much. After she passed away, he quit his job and secluded himself all the time. At the time, Mrs. Wilson, who had already moved out of the house, would check on her father in between work. But as it got busy, she couldn't go home often and couldn't get through on the phone. When a worried Mrs. Wilson finally returned home after a long while, Mr. John was gone. I filed a missing persons report, but he couldn't be found. If I had been by his side, this wouldn't have happened. It seemed like Mrs. Wilson had been blaming herself for her father's disappearance until now, and she cried sorrowfully. Seeing that also hurt me, and I wanted to bring Joe home. But Joe didn't react very well to Mrs. Wilson, and even if I took him home in his current condition, he would likely return to the park. Including getting him examined at a hospital, the hurdles are quite high. Dad, if we return home, will he remember something? Even if he doesn't remember, at least I want to take him to the hospital, Mrs. Wilson said as a daughter worrying about her father. I thought, and then came up with a good idea. Hey, Mrs. Wilson, let's knit. I mean, Mr. John is a really kind person. The reason I first became friends with him is because he spoke to me when he saw me knitting. He also cherished his gloves, so if you give him a gift, he might be interested and listen to you. Joe always seemed to have an interest in knitting. Mrs. Wilson also said optimistically, "My mom used to knit a lot." He might vaguely remember that. However, she looked down a bit. I've never knitted before. It's okay, I'll teach you, I said. Charles, thank you. I'm sorry you had to see me like this. Mrs. Wilson smiled weakly. She seemed a little worried, but it seemed like she wanted to do something for her father. Looking straight at me, she asked, "Could you teach me how to knit again?" Yes, of course, I replied. And so, I found myself teaching Mrs. Wilson to knit. However, there are only a few places where Mrs. Wilson and I can practice together. We can't go to her house, so we decided to knit in the car. Could you take that thread like this? I instructed. Yes, now put it through that loop. Oh, it's not going in well. Should I push it further in? Well, no. Don't pull the yarn like that. But things weren't going smoothly. I think we had this kind of conversation about 5 times. Mrs. Wilson is very capable at work, but it turns out she's actually incredibly clumsy. When the idea of knitting came up, it made sense that she might look down. I honestly thought it would be a long haul, but that's our relief. Mrs. Wilson apparently practiced at home, and before we knew it, she was getting the hang of it. She was using the most basic stitch, and it was pretty rough, but still, she kept at it for several months. Somehow, Mrs. Wilson finished knitting a scarf. Finally, let's go deliver it. But what if he doesn't accept it? He's not that kind of person. Come on, I wanted to show Joe the scarf that Mrs. Wilson worked so hard to make. So, I took her hand and headed to the park. I used to come to the park quite often, but this was Mrs. Wilson's first time since that day. When Joe saw us, he said in his usual calm voice, "Oh, isn't it, Charles? You're not alone today." "Go ahead, Mrs. Wilson," I said with a bit of nervousness. Mrs. Wilson looked straight at Joe and offered him the scarf. "Dad, it honestly makes me so sad that you've forgotten me, but I was so relieved to know you're alive. I won't even ask you to come back home, but I don't want you to catch a cold. I made this in the same color as the scarf my mom used to wear often. It's not as good as hers, but I'd like you to accept it." While telling her heartfelt feelings as a daughter, Mrs. Wilson gave the scarf towards him with a smile. Mrs. Wilson's mother was good at knitting, and this time Mrs. Wilson had made a scarf with a design similar to the one her mother often wore while she was alive. It was filled with memories. Wilson hoped that it might jog his memory of it. Joe accepted the scarf and said, "It's warm. I wonder why I feel so warm here, just looking at your smile. Ha, I wonder why I'm in tears." Joe said that as he wrapped the scarf around his neck, touching his chest and shedding a single tear. I wasn't expecting his memory to miraculously return just because of a scarf, but it seemed to have kind of triggered it. After that, he started going to the hospital with Mrs. Wilson, my boss. We're not sure if his memory will ever fully return, but it's said to promote Joe's health and social recovery. He didn't want to be hospitalized, but recently Joe has stopped going to the park and has started returning to Wilson's family home. Perhaps because of this positive progress, Joe has started to occasionally remember his own name, which made both Wilson and me happy. By the way, he still has the scarf I gave him, and he wears it alternately every day. Thank you, Charles. It's all thanks to you. And so, I returned to my usual routine of knitting in the park. On that day, Wilson came and sat next to me. Wilson stands out in a good way at the office, so I appreciate being able to talk with her in the park. I'm grateful. But ever since that knitting, Wilson has been acting much more casual with me. I guess we've gotten close, but to me, Wilson is too attractive, and it makes my heart race. What am I doing at my age? I feel so pathetic. You're the one who put all the effort into knitting, Mrs. Wilson. I didn't really do much. Teaching me to knit wasn't a big deal to you. Well, aha. I said, giving her a smile as I stuffed my mouth with a sandwich. Through our interactions, I've come to understand that Wilson tends to be stern with those she has high expectations of. At work, she had high expectations of me too, which is why she apologized for being so strict. So, Charles, would you like to have dinner with me sometime to thank you? Also, really. I was taken aback by her unexpected suggestion, but Wilson laughed and said, "Of course, or you don't want to have dinner with me. I'll go." I would be honored. I jumped at the chance, which made Wilson laugh again. "You're honest. Can we exchange our contact?" "Yes, I just realized I don't know your contact, Mrs. Wilson." "Call me Sophia. Register me as that, Charles." "Harrison?" "What?" I froze at hearing my full name, but Wilson just input my contact and then casually said, "I'll contact you later," and left. Wilson knew my full name all along, It makes me happy, and I can't help but grin. I'll try my best to earn her trust enough for her to call me by my name. While making such a determination, I start knitting a scarf woven in shades of blue and white. I hope to finish it before the dinner with Sophia, and then I will tell her what I feel. I love you. Will you be my girlfriend? I knew it. You took forever to say it. When I finally gathered the courage to confess my feelings over dinner, she happily said yes. So I wondered if I had been such an open book, but if she got the message, that's all that matters. So we officially became a couple, progressing steadily in our relationship, and eventually we decided to get married. By the way, we haven't had our wedding ceremony yet. Actually, when I proposed to her after a year of dating, I asked Sophia when the marriage registration was supposed to be done. I was thinking we should do it on a special date, but Sophia seemed to have different plans. You realize I'm over 30, right? Yeah, I know. Don't keep a woman waiting forever. I want to get married right away. Otherwise, I'm afraid someone else might snatch you away from me. What a cute thing to say. So we submitted the marriage registration before the ceremony. Now, although Sophia and I are married, I'm still doing my knitting at the same park. I want to wear a stole you made at our wedding. When you hear something like that, it motivates you, doesn't it? Plus, Joe is planning to come to the wedding. He hasn't remembered everything yet, but he's slowly recalling bits and pieces of his past. I thought our wedding might serve as some kind of trigger, but he seemed unsure, asking, "Am I even supposed to be there?" with an anxious look on his face. So Joe worries. I'm planning to gift him something I've knitted too. According to him, the things we've knitted have been like good luck charms to him and have been really reassuring. What color should I go for? Imagining my future bride, I pick up my yarn again today. Did I not tell you to? It's entirely your fault if something goes wrong. Taking advantage of the excellent moment, the manager grins at me as he says this. Before I know it, he says, "You're fired," and I feel like something has snapped inside of me. I work for the corporation and am 48 years old. My name is Jason. I oversee sales for an industrial company that deals with metal products and electronic components. My wife and I share a home with our working-age daughter. I've studied English since I was a student, and as a result, I've traveled abroad for business without any issues and have used those abilities in my current position. My days are quite busy as a sales manager because I'm in charge of a lot of client contacts and team interactions, but I enjoy my work. Working for a company exposes you to a variety of people, and eventually, you learn how to get along with them all. However, there is one individual with whom I have yet to come to terms. Please remember not to slack off just because the CEO is away on a trip abroad. Jason, you alone bear full accountability if your team makes a mistake. Tom, the manager, is that individual. Tom moved from a branch office to our department last year. Just a little over 40, he's younger than me and a manager already. As you can see, Tom acts like a manager by speaking harshly and with a condescending attitude toward his staff. You'd think he would be an excellent manager, even though he was just promoted. However, that is not at all the case. Actually, word on the office is that Tom was promoted not because of his skills, but rather by sucking up to the corporate officials. Yes, without a doubt. There's nothing to worry about because everyone is remaining concentrated and working hard, I retorted. Tom gave a disapproving snort. We'll see about that. Tom is still too far from his subordinates due to his attitude and behavior since joining our department last year. Of course, instead of the haughty manager, the team comes to me, someone they know better. Tom is very hard on me because he doesn't like that. Little irritations gradually became more serious issues, such as shouting insults, which genuinely seemed like juvenile bullying. He called me a useless idiot stuck at manager level. Once, even though I was older than him. I can still clearly recall that incident. I was more astonished than offended by it. Dealing with Tom has been stressful lately, to the point of weariness, and I've been having headaches. Our CEO is currently traveling abroad for business, as Tom previously said. He is likely coming to observe firsthand and assess several areas of our operations at our factory at one of our international subsidiaries. It is anticipated that the CEO will return next week. Tom's aggressive demeanor caused tension within the crew, but I spoke up in an attempt to diffuse the situation. He's only being severe because he holds everyone to a high standard. Everything will work out as long as everyone performs their duties as normal. Upon hearing this, the faces on my crew brightened. That's good. It should make everyone relax a little. I was relieved too, but at that moment, I was unaware that Tom was staring at me with a fierce expression from behind. Tom's words reverberated throughout the sales department 3 days following their encounter. Do you even realize what you've done? I glanced over at the manager's desk out of habit. A younger employee named Mike stood in front of Tom, looking pallid. I'm very sorry, but I'm sure There are no justifications. In what way will you accept accountability for this? I made my way over to the two of them without pausing. Tom, did Mike do something wrong? I inquired. Tom gave me a really stern look. This individual completely botched a client meeting. He was totally unaware that today was the meeting day. The client called me in a fit of rage. They were considering signing a contract, but they are now rethinking it. Wholly inappropriate. For what duration has he been employed here? Mike has spent the last 3 years working for the company. He's grown accustomed to the work and is now rather dependable. I work with him, so I know him well. Mike takes his work seriously and methodically. Would he truly forget the meeting and do such a thoughtless error? I promise, Jason, that I did not juggle the schedule. The client meeting is scheduled for next week. It's accurate. Mike persisted. I tried to defuse the situation. All right, so let's find out from the client whether Mike truly made a mistake. We're truly sorry. I will be there with him as his manager. Tom's eyebrows flew up at what I said. Verify? Do you think I'm lying, or what? Jason, I told you previously. It is all your fault if something goes wrong. Tom gives an arrogant smile. The tension was palpable throughout the sales department. Tom, Jason is unrelated to this. Please allow me to apologize to the client right now. I'm currently speaking with Jason. Don't take independent action. Tom cut in. I've always considered you to be a problem, Jason. You continuously undermine me as manager, giving the impression that the team trusts you more than I do. Are you attempting to act like the nice boss? I recoiled at Tom's statements, which seemed to be his actual feelings. I never meant to do that. Since he's the kind of boss that the team tends to despise, I've actually always attempted to act as a mediator between him and the group. I know how this is going to work out because I received the call straight from the client. They won't change their mind no matter what we do. You're fired, Jason. The department was filled with murmuring when the word fired was spoken. Mike exclaimed, If anyone's responsible, it's me, in a panic. Tom was not listening, though. Rather, he continued to sneer at me. There was a strange feeling. Regardless of his managerial role, Tom lacked the authority to terminate anyone on his own, even if he had all this time to talk about it. My mind raced, but all the evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Tom had disliked me from the beginning. He was trying to force me out by using this as an excuse. Something inside of me snapped. Mike was still complaining, so I stopped him and shook my head slowly. I'll submit my resignation tomorrow. I see. I'll then own up to my mistakes and personally apologize to the client. Mike, please back off. It would only exacerbate the situation if you were to apologize to the client, who doesn't even want to see your face. Keep your distance from them. That moment, Tom had a smug smile on his face that I will never forget. Remember that this is not over. I told myself I'm not giving in to Tom. Tom narrowed his eyes satisfiedly, not understanding what I was thinking. I announced my resignation from my employment to my family that evening. Their response surprised me more than I had anticipated. I thought they might be astonished or perhaps dissatisfied. As I had anticipated, they appeared startled at first, but my daughter quickly grinned and exclaimed, "That's fantastic. Dad, I've always felt that you were working yourself too hard. Recently, you have also started complaining of headaches. I believe it would be wise to ease up for a bit. Yes, but it would be great if you contributed more to household chores." My spouse gave our daughter a nod of consent. Since we both have full-time jobs, we can get by if you take things a little slower. Hey, don't appear so depressed as though everything is ending. Unwind a little. Their unanticipated generosity made me cry. My kid said, "Dad, are you crying?" "No, obviously not, but thank you," I said, averting my eyes. My wife and daughter's laughter could be heard. For the first time in a long time, I felt the stress melt from my shoulders as I was surrounded by my family's love. A few days following my resignation, an unforeseen event occurred. I was seated on the couch in the CEO's office of the company I had left behind. The CEO was seated on the couch across from me, and Tom was kneeling on the ground a short distance away. From the outside, it would have appeared to be a strange scene. Even though I was nearing the end of my allotted paid vacation, the CEO had personally reached out to me to ask if I might visit the office. To be honest, I didn't see why I should return. But I could see how the CEO, who had just returned from a business trip overseas, may be perplexed. I made the decision to leave because I felt a little bad for not saying goodbye in an appropriate manner after working for the company for so long. When I heard Tom's story, I was astounded. The CEO said, taking a quick, shocked glance at Tom, "I mean, what right did he have to think he could fire you?" The CEO had apparently come to me first thing following his return from his overseas vacation, and for very particular reasons. He inquired about my movements, to which Tom smugly replied, "I dismissed Jason in order to hold him accountable for the trouble that transpired during your absence. I've been dealing with that useless guy as a manager for a long time, since he's always all talk." Tom, or so I was told, described everything with a smug look on his face. I feel so relieved that he's finally gone. In a technical sense, I resigned, thus I did so voluntarily. But let's ignore that for the time being. The CEO's face became pale when he learned that I had left the company. The $23 million agreement is off the table without Jason. What have you done, Tom? Still in disbelief, the CEO inquired. Tom allegedly muttered, "What?" looking confused. It transpires that the CEO visited a company we do business with for a different problem while on his international travels. I had done business with this client in my early years because I spoke English well, and they had grown to be one of my most significant accounts. During that visit, the CEO of the foreign company had suggested a new agreement. Seeing the opportunity, our CEO wholeheartedly concurred. The foreign CEO did, however, have one request. "I trust your company, but Jason's character is the main reason I initially chose to work with you. I want him to handle this transaction once more." The CEO nodded cheerfully, not realizing that Tom had fired me. Of course. Is that accurate? Since I was unaware of this, I was equally shocked. But Tom just went white and murmured, "That's impossible." "Tom, you may not be aware of this, but since Jason joined the company, he has closed a number of deals," the CEO went on. "You are far from correct when you say that he is just all talk." The CEO's suggestive remarks caused Tom's neck to constrict, and he bowed his head in response. A quiet knock on the door occurred at that very time. Mike was the one who came in. "I asked him to come," the CEO remarked, "since he's involved in your resignation." Mike stared at the floored manager as soon as he walked in. Mike said, "I went to apologize to the client, even though the manager tried to stop me," as he passed an envelope to the CEO. I was shocked to learn something unexpected. The client's timetable matched my memory of it exactly. The documents that document my correspondence with their agent are enclosed in the packet. Tom jerked his head back. Mike gave him a quick look and snorted. "I regret your attempt to prevent me from getting in touch with the client. It appears from their confirmation that the error you held me responsible for was wholly untrue. The client contact was shifted from me to you for an unknown reason, but the meeting schedule remained the same. Would you please elaborate, Tom?" "Tom, please explain yourself," the CEO barked. Though it wasn't particularly hot, Tom's brow was starting to perspire. His gaze flitted about as though he was trying to find a way out. "Give up being so obstinate. Would you mind telling the entire thing and getting it off your chest?" I stated. Tom pounded his hand on the ground and muttered curses. Tom seemed to have been planning to fire me for some time, but since I was so meticulous about my work and left no room for error, he reasoned that it would be simpler to invent an error by one of my subordinates who was only beginning to get used to the position. His strategy was to first stir up a commotion about Mike's alleged error, assign blame to me, and then terminate me. Subsequently, he would ensure that Mike refrained from interacting with the customer by devising an explanation, and Tom would take charge of the discussions. He might brag, "It's because I apologized so sincerely," if the deal went through. If that didn't work, he would just say that Mike was at fault after all. That was his plan. He reasoned that he could fire Mike just as easily as he fired me if he started to bother him. What a disgusting kind of man Tom is. Considering all the fuss Mike made, it makes sense that he didn't rush to have him go and apologize. My feeling had been just right. Jason would take responsibility if he thought his subordinate had made a mistake, Tom said. I whispered under my breath, "Pathetic." When Tom heard me, his temper boiled over and his scowl deepened. "My role is manager. You're tracked at manager level, even though I'm higher up than you, and everyone still regards you like a huge deal. I am capable of doing my work as well. What separates me from you, and why?" He babbled on about how no one seemed to value his hard work, and his voice gradually became more and more sad. To be honest, Mike and I both had a fictitious error placed on us. Thus, we were the ones who should have been allowed to cry. What a pitiful pretext for an outburst. If you had been more sincere with your subordinates, they would have naturally come to rely on you, I replied. Mike gave a nod of approval. The manager's only accomplishment was to consistently undermine our team's spirit by disparaging us every time he spoke. He would even give us his own task to do. Jason once spoke with HR on everyone's behalf, but Tom's influence prevented them from ever taking it seriously. "Hey, give it up." Tom angrily glared at his subordinate, attempting to silence him. "Don't just make things up." However, his expression turned nasty as he bent his head once again in response to my and the CEO's intense looks. After listening silently for a while, the CEO eventually said, "That's sufficient. Tom, I get it all. Since I had heard you were qualified and competent, I granted your promotion, even though it is obvious that your personality is not a good fit for this position. I take responsibility for my tardiness in realizing that. Jason, Mike, I'm deeply sorry." The CEO got up and gave me and Mike a heartfelt apology. He would not move, no matter how quickly we attempted to encourage him to raise his head. I had been away from the CEO for a while and had almost forgotten that he detested dishonesty beyond all else. He was irritated not only with Tom's behavior, but also with himself for elevating Tom to manager. Tom was still staring down when I turned to face him. "You know who you really owe an apology to." After a while, Tom clenched his teeth in frustration, put his hands on the ground, and mumbled, "I'm sorry," in a raspy voice, When Tom eventually apologized, I could tell he was still asking himself, why me? He was crying out of frustration rather than regret. You can never progress as long as you're stuck asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Regardless of where you go or what you do. Perhaps my remarks were too personal, as Tom's eyes grew wide and he began to scratch at his head. Tom was later let go with good reason. Both the HR personnel who fell under his sway and the executives who assisted him in moving up the ranks were held responsible and punished. I gave it a lot of thought before deciding to come back to the company at the CEO's request. Tom's erratic behavior was the cause of this entire situation. The CEO was not at fault. I made the decision to take a bit longer off because there was still some time before the overseas negotiation, and the CEO encouraged me to do so. My health had been declining, as my daughter had pointed out, so this was an ideal time to take a break. I'm going to get legal advice during my vacation with Mike, and I'm going to sue Tom for damages. I had already determined to get legal counsel on Tom when I initially made the decision to leave. You could have just quit for real, my wife and daughter argued, but I enjoy my job and don't want to burden my family. After making sure I fully heal, I'll be prepared to tackle the negotiations with all of my might.